Hey guys, LunarLemon here with the sixth and final part of my GD level commentary series. This series has been a lot of fun to make, and this part has 7 levels, my 7 most recent levels, and, well, the only levels I haven't gone over so far. There's no real reason to delay it, so let's get right into it. The first level we will be talking about is called Genshin Apple Pie. And I've never played Genshin Impact before, but I just thought the phrase Genshin Impact Apple Pie was really funny. With that said, the full phrase exceeds the character limit of level titles, so I shortened it in, the best way I could without it, missing the point, or, the joke, or whatever, however you want to look at it. And while I was teasing the level and whatnot, I referred to it as Project G. I just thought it would be funny to hide the title until the level was released. And the title was always there. The title was there before the code name, if you will. Which is really backwards, but I don't know, I just thought it would be funny. In any event, this level doesn't really have much of a specific theme, but there are 2 things that seem to be pretty consistent throughout the level, for the lack of a better term. It uses a lot of cool colors, so a lot of greens, blues, and purples, and it has a lot of camera triggers and whatnot, at least in comparison to what I usually have. It's not done in a dumb or disorienting way, at least not in my opinion. But I don't know, the camera adds, to the energy of the level, if you will. Kind of makes it more interesting, more fun, and I guess that is kind of the whole point of the camera triggers. The only thing I feel like that I tried to do that I didn't really execute properly is at 24, there's that sideways ball part, and that was supposed to sort of feel like one of those sideways gameplay parts in levels, but it's not. It doesn't feel like it, and it isn't. There is no sideways gameplay in this level. And while I didn't really execute that properly, I still think what I did works perfectly fine. Something else that's in the level, and this can be seen in a couple of the sneak peeks for the level and whatnot, is that it's only visible in the editor, but there is a structure off screen and invisible that is made of normal faces, and it's shaped like a penis because it's funny. But yeah, this level's pretty standard. The gameplay's pretty fun in my opinion. The camera effects are nice, and decoration wise, pretty standard all around. There's not a whole lot to really add to this level, so we'll just leave it off there. The next level we will be talking about is Neo Crimson Dystopia. This is another level that I feel like I kind of just made, but I wouldn't exactly call it, standard for me. I sort of just started making gameplay and then started giving it, this neon red theme that I really liked. And then I was basically done with the level, and then I realized I never actually gave the level a name. The entire time I was working on it, because I didn't want to have it just called Unnamed 1, Unnamed 0, whatever, I gave it a working title of Big Mac with Large Fry. I didn't want that to be the final title, especially since I had just released a level with a joke title, and I didn't want this to just become a constant thing. But this level actually takes a lot of inspiration from other levels that I really like. Well, I guess not all of them are ones I really like. To be specific, one of the inspirations was Crimson Clutter by Red Universe, mostly, due to the red color scheme and whatnot. Frankly, there really wasn't that much in particular that was inspired by Crimson Clutter, aside from that. But then, the swing part at 67% is inspired by Nazgub. Yes, the level is called. And, that level has a pretty, neon look to it, so it makes sense. And that does include, the flickering that some of the lines do. I thought that was a pretty neat thing that I did. As well as just how the glow is made, because there's actually multiple things that glow. That's multiple colors, basically. I'm not exactly sure how to explain it. And while I don't exactly remember how I took inspiration from Jazer or Scorch VX, My guesses are Magma Bound and either the asymmetrical duel or the factory area is inspired by Matilda the Machine. I could be wrong though, I'm not really sure. All I know is that it made sense in my head at the time. This level, when I first released it, also had a lot of secret ways apparently, or, like at least like 2 or 3. And these have since been fixed, but my friend Tyson pointed them out to me after the level was released. And I kind of made him my unofficial playtester for most of my levels afterwards. He had actually asked a few times in the past to playtest levels for me, and I think this level was kind of the nail in the coffin for my decision. Because, I don't know, I guess I just thought I had it all covered, and then he kept pointing things out, and yeah, I guess, 2 heads are better than 1 anyway. But I really like the theming I had going for here. Like, you would think a red and black color scheme is pretty generic, since it's been done for like a million extreme demons and whatnot, but this isn't really supposed to be like a blood red. It's more of a like neon or crimson type of thing. I mean, the title kind of explains exactly what it is, Neo Crimson Dystopia. I really like the gameplay in this level, especially like even the asymmetrical duel at 51. It doesn't feel particularly difficult, surprisingly. Though sometime after I released it, I did have to nerf the spider orb at 55, because the timing was pretty strict, but there's actually an invisible spider orb behind the one you can see, but the one behind it is bigger, just to make the hitbox more lenient. But yeah, I really like the wave part right afterwards, where the 2 waves are the same gravity, but then it goes back to single. I've seen that done in a few levels every now and then. I'm kind of just rambling at this point. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this level. I think it turned out fine. I like it. The next level we'll be looking at is Yucapo, which is opaque spelled backwards. Now, there's not a whole lot to say about this level either, but basically the idea is that it was intended to be a simpler and more consistent style, and the other part is that it wasn't really supposed to have any blending, and it doesn't. So the block design is unvaried, it's all just the like checkerboard thing, and I did that on purpose. It's not supposed to be varied, it's supposed to be, a simpler level. And despite that, it still ended up being kinda object heavy, and in a lot of parts it does kinda look weird. There's a lot of parts of the level where, to me, the colors look really weird. And I guess I just wanted to try and add more variety in the colors, and it absolutely could have been worse. They're not awful, they're just not particularly great. The idea for this level was generally better in my head, and it's not a very well talked about level. Like, I don't think people particularly have anything against it, but people just don't really talk about it at all. For better or for worse, I'll put it to you that way. There's not really a whole lot to talk about with specific gameplay of this level, except for the drop at 61%. I thought what I did with the wave was kinda cool, but it does feel disproportionately difficult. I like how I kinda made it so that the wave's at like an angle. That way it looks sorta more horizontal and vertical as opposed to the typical diagonal. Maybe it's just to me, but it doesn't feel like it was executed correctly, but I think it's mostly just because I'm so used to seeing the wave at a 45-degree angle. And, I mean, maybe it looks cooler to people who aren't, as familiar with the wave, mostly new players, but I can't imagine newer players playing this level, because that would just be incredibly specific. Unless it was through the recent tab or something, which, slim odds. Yeah, that is Yucapo. We're kind of on a roll with levels with funny names. However, this is my most recent level to have a non-serious title. With that said, this level is called Eat a Bucket of Sand. And I didn't really know what to call it, I just thought it would be funny to call a level that. And why did I call it that? It was kind of an inside joke between me and, of all people, my mom. So in our kitchen, we have this whiteboard. Whenever we need something from the grocery store, we'll just write on that whiteboard what we need. And sometimes I'll just put random bullshit like heroin, cocaine, pneumono ultramicroscopic socovolcanoconiosis. But back in August of 2025, I kept asking for a bucket of sand. Now, what would I do with a bucket of sand? I don't know. But yeah, this level uses those 1.0 blocks. With that said, I focused more on gameplay with this level, and I think I did a fine enough job for the most part. Yeah, believe it or not, there's actually a few things worth mentioning about this level. Guess we're not par for the course after all. Anyway, this level has been updated multiple times to rebalance gameplay. And this is mostly due to the wave part at 42. This part was remade several times, and it looks nothing like how it used to. The current version is the most drastic change because it was so disproportionately difficult, and it just got really annoying to play. And actually, that's why in the compilation footage at the end of the level it says level verified, because I verified this update of the level. That update didn't really change much else in the level, at least to my recollection. Not that it matters a whole lot. But this level was really only made because at the point of which it was made, I had already announced that Risers 5 would be releasing in September. However, I finished Risers 5 like a month ahead of time. So this was like early mid-August, and I wanted to make something and release something before Risers 5, even if it was, a bit of a nothing level, for the lack of a better term. And nobody really talks about this level, but I don't particularly dislike it or anything like that. But this level was sort of one of those, it came out of nowhere levels. Like, I didn't really talk about it before I made it, I didn't really preview it, and, I mean, there are some interesting ideas that I used in this level, especially in the last third or so of the level. I don't know why, I really like that cube duel, even though it's incredibly simple, mostly due to, music sync, but I don't know, I think it syncs pretty well. Then there's the weird teleport triggers at 85, at the robot part. Originally, those were actually supposed to make you move slightly backwards, but I decided against it for two reasons. Number one, playtesting would become a nightmare because it would fuck up the sync. Secondly, it would probably be kind of confusing to play because there's not much of a way to indicate that it's happening. I mean, I could have figured it out, but I still think people would have screwed up timings and it would have felt a bit unfair. And so as a result, those teleport triggers actually just don't really move you at all. After that original plan was kind of scrapped, I decided, oh, well, what if I just make them change your Y value a bit? They don't. They just don't. For better or for worse, though. I feel like maybe if it was executed the way I intended the second time, it would kind of make some bugs that would make the level unplayable, or that make that part really weird, really awkward. Though, now that I'm thinking about it, who am I to talk about indicators when the same level has force blocks at 52 with 0 indicator that you're supposed to hit the ceiling and floor? It's pretty short-lived, and it's kind of obvious if you know how those blocks work, so it's not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, there's not a whole lot left to say about this level. It's a bit more interesting than you may think. Now, I'm gonna break the rules a bit here. And that's because the next level, chronologically, would be Risers 5. However, due to how Risers 5 was, I'm actually going to save that one for last. So, with that said, the next level we'll be talking about is Neo Emerald Ruins. I originally made this as more of a sequel to Neo Crimson Dystopia, but since there's some, pretty key differences, I see it as more of a spiritual successor. Sort of like, I guess, Bloodbath versus Cataclysm. But this title, if you will, was decided way later on. Title as in spiritual successor, not Neo Emerald Ruins. I actually don't even remember when I decided the name for it, but yeah. Obviously, big key difference. This is green instead of red, hence emerald instead of crimson. And I guess I don't have a whole lot to say about this level. There's definitely a lot of variety with the block design, I can say that much. And I'm really proud of how the coins turned out. The second one is actually, like, really clever, really hidden. Because at the robot part, there is a yellow gravity portal, and you end up in an alternate route that makes you skip the size portal, and then you have to do the rest of the robot part and that UFO part and the swing part mini. But at the end of the swing part, you can go up, and you'll be able to fit into that small gap there. Now, the first one is a lot easier, where the orbs you click at 13% are different than what you would normally do. And, yeah, that's fine. And there was originally supposed to be a third coin, where there was a key at, like, 85, but the key was super hard to get due to, you know, being at a really high speed. And when you get that key, it would change the last spike from a double to a triple, and the coin would just be right after that. But like I said, since the spider part is at 4 times speed, it would have been really difficult to do. But yeah, I like how the first coin is like slightly off screen, and it's like, oh, how do I get that? I can't jump to get it. And then the second coin is, I mean, you can see it clear as day, but it's like, oh, but I'm big, I can't fit through that gap. And the way you skip the size portal is really hidden. Like, the gravity portal is visible, but you have to look really closely. You're probably not going to see it while moving. And even then, the jump into it is really precise, because chances are you're going to end up hitting the red jump pad, which would make it impossible to get down there. But yeah, that's a good coin though. It's difficult, but if you screw it up, it's not very punishing. So yeah, not to toot my own horn, but I'm really proud of that. Another thing I'm really proud of with this level is the custom orb at 74, where it literally just turns you from dual to singular, but yeah, it's a pretty simple thing to do with custom orbs with the square orbs, but that's what those are all about. Whenever I use those, I like to, you know, give them colors, you know, pretty close to whatever portal is, you know, being the effect of it. I can't English, dude. But yeah, this level, I know I've been saying this word a lot throughout this series, but, you know, deco-wise, it's pretty standard. I think it looks pretty good. And, you know, gameplay-wise, it's fun too. It's pretty balanced, at least I would say so. But nothing beats those coins. Now, onto my most recent level. This is Risers 1 Re-Risen. This is a remake of the original Risers, and it is actually quite different from it, but there are a lot of similarities. This level was finished way before it was uploaded, but I uploaded it on the 10th anniversary of the level, which is the only reason that I waited so long to do that. This level was one of my few levels to have a working title that was Re-Risers. And I liked that title, but I wanted something with a little more pizzazz, if you know what I mean. And I really like how this turned out. The deco is very simple. It is a little empty, but so was the original. But this still happens to be its own thing. It uses the same song, same background, same ground, and for the most part, same gameplay structure. It does a lot of its own things in a lot of areas, and, you know, that's the whole idea. This was completely made from scratch. I did not make a copy of the original level for this because it would probably look very different otherwise. But the first part ends up being its own thing, having like a blocky theme to it with like pretty simple colors like, you know, red, green, yellow, blue. But, of course, you know, we have the monsters at the UFO part. I think the original only had 1, but this one has 2. Then there's a ball part right before the drop, and then the drop goes into a robot part, or it is also a robot part for the build-up, but you know what I mean. goes into a cube part, weird blue portal stuff with a monster. And this wave part is not the same speed as the original, but I don't know, I thought it fit better. Now, at 39% in the original level, there was the infamous rotating blocks. And those are not here. But because some of my friends really wanted them back, I made it so that after you pass those blocks, there's a 10% chance that they will rotate like crazy. And it's very quick and doesn't affect gameplay, because I didn't want it to affect gameplay. I wasn't even going to include that, but I added it later on due to popular demand. And yeah, generally there's a lot of things in this level that I feel that I did a lot better. Ironically, that very brief mini-wave part at 54 is actually kind of the opposite of how it used to be, because you were supposed to hold for the brief part, but now you don't click at all. And then there's the weird ship part with all the fading blocks at 61. And I didn't really have many ideas for decoration here. This one's pretty empty, but yeah, it's probably the best I could have done to keep it better, but still similar enough to the original. But probably my favorite part of the level is at 71, where I actually did the castle theme the way I wanted it to be for the most part. I was going to have some of those background brick blocks be like in the front as well, but changed my mind. I think I attempted it and it just looked weird. But, you know, it is what it is. Now, this part is also interesting because the original Risers was a 2.0 level, but I made it so that the second half of the ball part is now a spider part. But I think that ends up giving this version of the level more of a unique personality. And the lava looks a lot better here as well. There is also a secret at 83 where if you switch gravity before hitting that cube portal, because you're not supposed to switch gravity, you die, and there's hidden text there. Because otherwise that actually would have made a secret way, I believe. And then the last 12%, I originally didn't want to do the spikes with the black background again, but I decided to do it anyway. Though these are spikes with half spikes on them, and one of the jumps also has pink orbs with it. And this part also syncs way better, because the original I remember having some sync problems. But even right at the end, there's, not much of a logo. It's really just like, the text objects. But it says Risers by Boycat 2016. But then it switches to say Risers Re-Risen LunarLemon 2026. I'm sure many of you know this, but my old username was Boycat or Boycat Official, specifically when this level was made. And that's why I put that there. But yeah, even though not many people talk about the first level, it did still create the start of one of my most iconic series. And this is the third fucking level to use this goddamn song that I've created. Okay, that was phrased weird. I didn't make the song, but you know what I mean. And I am really just sick of this song now. But yeah, we're done talking about it now. But we're not done talking about the Riser series. One of my most hyped up levels. I spent so much time and effort on it. I wanted to make it the absolute best that I could have. And it is, as of right now, my best work. And I'm not going to delay it any longer. So, we're done talking about Risers 1 Re-Risen, and we already talked about the first 4 levels of the series. And without further ado, let's get into it. Risers 5. One of my most anticipated levels, and my absolute magnum opus. I restarted the creation of this level twice. I did not like how the old versions were looking or how they were playing, but then the third time was the charm. And after some playtesting from some of my friends and just general experimentation and ideas and feedback, etc., this is what we got. And I am so proud of how this level turned out. Admittedly, though, I am a little disappointed that it didn't get much attention, and it's probably because of the Magic tab changes that were made sometime before this level was uploaded. And so now you need to have at least one creator point to appear on the Magic tab, which I think is really fucked up, and it just doesn't work. It's an unfair thing to creators who are legitimately good but don't have creator points. Let's just go from start to end. Firstly, you'll see at the first cube part that there is a 4x3 mode, and in the sneak peeks for the level, that was there, except it didn't do anything yet. And actually, it hardly does anything in the first place, because I tested the level in 4x3, and it's fine up until you get to the end screen. The end screen has had a few names removed and added over time, and some of them are, like, slightly off-screen. Even if you're in 16:9 mode, though admittedly I didn't notice that before, but some of the names just move there. Same with some of the text on the other side, like the demon face and, like, where it says 200 plus hours in editor and 72,540 objects. But some of the names that appear in the end screen are people I'm not friends with anymore. That's why I've had to remove them and add some. And I don't really want to get into all that, so I won't. But I wanted to dedicate this to as many people as I could think of, because I just really love how it turned out. And of course, I add extra credit for Tyson and Peyton, since they play-tested the level, and of course there are longtime fans. And the logo of the level's not anything crazy, but I like the color pulse it has, as well as the bounciness of it. But yeah, I said we would go from beginning to end, and here I am already at the end, but let's go back to the start. So this cube part is pretty standard. It's slow, it has a slight sepia effect, slight chromatic effect. Nothing too crazy, but I think it's still a strong start because the difficulty's appropriate, the decoration isn't too much or too little, and generally that's what I really like about how this level turned out. I was really patient with decorating, and I wanted every part to be perfect. Well, not perfect, but, the best I could. Though, ironically, after this cube part and spider part, when you get to this blue part, which was supposed to look like really snowy or icy, this part was usually cited as a difficulty curve, though I have nerfed this part since then, partly because the sync was a little messed up, and I did agree that this part was, in comparison, kind of inconsistent. But, there's actually snowflakes in this part, and there's icicles briefly, but they're a little hard to see because of the camera moving. And then this bluish-purplish ship part is, like, really nerve-wracking to me, but probably just because I'm terrible at playing as ship. But there's also an even tighter ship thing right above it for one of the coins. Honestly, the coins in this level are not great, and they weren't added, like, last minute or anything, but they're just not particularly great. But yeah, this purplish part still feels kind of like part of the snow part from before, and then we're at this orangish, fire-ish part, which kind of looks like Distorted Inferno now that I think about it. That was coincidental, though. But it does still have the checkerboard in the background, because of course it does. The wave part afterwards is interesting because the lines that are connecting a lot of the saws, obviously they're not solid. But for some odd reason, I feel like adding those lines made the part significantly harder than it was in the layout version beforehand. Even Tyson agreed, because, he was playtesting the level in multiple different states of it, because, I fine-tuned gameplay over time. And I don't really think I did much about it, but, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot to do there. Because I didn't want to just kill the deco like that. That would have just been dumb. I still like how that part turned out, of course, but, you know, it is what it is. However, the lines that appear on the top and bottom, one of them used to be barely touchable, and they're not supposed to be touchable at all. I made sure of that, but there were a few frames where you were able to touch one of them and it would kill you. But I basically just made it so that there's no collision on those blocks, so even if you touch them, you're not gonna die. But yeah, I still like how that turned out. This cube part is standard, for the lack of a better term. And then there's this ball part with a heart in the background, and I'm just gonna outright say it. I copied this straight from Grayscale 3 and then just changed the colors on it. I just really liked how it turned out, and I tried to recreate it from scratch, but I don't know what I did with the things that are connecting it to the edges of the screen, because I could not recreate it for the life of me, so I just copied it. But it's not plagiarism if I'm copying from myself, is it? So it's not like I'm missing credit or anything, but I digress. But yeah, this part I'd say is pretty interesting. Has like a fisheye effect. It's pretty subtle. It does affect gameplay a little bit though. But it goes in and out of asymmetrical duels, which I think are pretty fun. Though the click at 47 used to be pretty awkward. But frankly, I think that was just me not paying enough attention and therefore was just a skill issue. And it goes to the buildup of the drop, and then of course it's getting all shaky and chromatic, and it says Risers 5. And the text that says LunarLemon is actually barely visible, which I didn't really notice before, but, you know, who cares about that anyway? Now we're at the drop. It's raining purple. It's also purple. This part is also one of many instances where I used text as decoration. I used it in a few different ways here, and generally, if you're using the right font, I would very much recommend doing this. It can be done in a lot of interesting ways. But, you know, we get through this part, we have this tunnel very similar to the ones I've done in the past a couple times. And, of course, I can't make a magnum opus without including a waterfall. This one's actually water this time, too. Though, when it gets hue shifted, it turns purple. And then a different shade of blue briefly. But this level's just so exciting to play and to watch to me. Maybe I'm biased, I don't know. I don't even really care. But yeah, this part's bubbly, rainy, and then it goes into this green part with like, it feels kind of toxic, like there's nuclear waste or something. Like it even has that like biohazard symbol. And this was a reference to that brief green part in Risers 4, of course. Which, I don't really know why I made that in Risers 4, I kinda just did. Though that green part is pretty brief, and I'm surprised that I managed to use the split screen trigger in a way that works pretty well. And that ball part does have some, like, lines as indicators of how you're supposed to do it, but they're pretty hard to see. And then this mini cube part at 77, with, like, these flashing blocks in the background. Now, usually when I do effects like that, that's with the random trigger. However, I didn't do that this time, because holy shit, this would have taken forever if I did. There are multiple colors, multiple tiles, and I would have to have a random trigger choose a random tile and a random color for said tile. Repeatedly. And do you have any idea how many groups that would use? Because I sure don't. And I don't want to know. That would have taken so long and would have been kind of complicated and just not worth the headache. For one minuscule detail that people probably wouldn't even notice. Does it sound worth it to you? Well, it shouldn't. But I still really like how that turned out, so I don't give a fuck. And then after the cube part at 82, you fall into the block into that half-speed portal, and there's actually a song trigger there. Like, sometimes when I play the level, it sounds like it's jumping slightly differently, and that's because it is. Because this song is actually a lot longer, and I wanted to use the ending of the song as well, especially with how I made the end screen appear. And this was a good spot for it to jump, pretty much, without the level being too long or too short. And this was the type of thing I was talking about when I made super picks that I wanted to do, but I couldn't. But I could do it here, so I did. This last part has some pretty washed out colors intentionally. It's supposed to feel like, it's ending. And there's like gears in the background to make it kind of look like a factory, but not fully. Take it as you will, I guess. Though one thing that's worth mentioning is the jump at 98 is a really awkward timing. Even though it's really just a double spike jump, you have to time it earlier, else you'll hit the spike hanging right after it. Maybe I should have nerfed it a bit, but, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. And even though that particular part is very dark, it's still visible enough. All that optimization later, and it's down to 72,000 objects, which is pretty solid, I would say. And I know it also says that I spent over 200 hours in the editor, and there have been times where I said I spent over 300 hours. So, how many hours did I spend in the editor? Good question. Let me clarify. When the game was telling me how many hours I spent in the editor on the level, it was climbing really quickly, and there was only like a week or so between it saying 200 hours and 300 hours. And that doesn't make any sense, because yes, there are more than 100 hours in a week, but that's still a good chunk out of the week. And even though it was summertime and I really wasn't getting many hours at work at the time, I still find it hard to believe that I spent 100 hours within a week or so. I don't know what the reasoning behind this is, but I don't want to say an amount that I know is false. And I wouldn't be surprised if I did spend 200 hours in the editor on this level. This level took me 7 months to make. And trust me, there are more than 200 hours in a span of 7 months. I know that for a fact. And so, I don't really know how much in-game time this level took to make. But it was a lot. I won't deny that. I also completely forgot to mention so far, this level is my most difficult level. For a while, I wasn't sure if it was harder than Sour Nostalgia, but it definitely is. It feels like it is actually in hard demon difficulty. Yeah, this level was a long time coming, and in my personal opinion, I think it was worth it. I love how this level turned out, and I don't know what the general consensus on it is, but hey, I like what I made, and maybe that's all that matters. And with that said, we will be concluding part 6 of my GD level commentary series. This series was so much fun to make. It was really nice to look back on my older levels, especially to find hidden artifacts that I forgot about, and to share a variety of fun facts about all of my levels that are all in one place, I absolutely love creating levels in this game, and it has been so fun to do so, and I'm going to continue making levels. And I appreciate all my fans who have stuck around for a long time. Even if you haven't been around in my community for that long, I appreciate everything. And yeah, this series was so much fun to make, and I really hope you all enjoyed it. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.